Francis came to the door it was one evening, and I actually answered the door, and he says, would you think of joining the Navy? I said, what Navy? He said, the Irish Navy. He said, you're getting £14 a week, and they house you and they feed you. I said, that means you have £14 a week all to myself. Grand. I said, all right. I said, okay, yeah. So he says, they're coming to Longford Barracks next week, and I was just gone 17. I was only gone 17. This was at the end of March. I was only 17 on the 15th of March. So we went up. They measured us. Are you sure you're 17? This is what they said to you. And Anthony, my friend's brother, Francis, who called the door to me, he was a little bit shorter, so he managed to stand up on your tippy toes. He did, so he got in. Even though he was short at the time, he hears to see us actually go mad. But anyway, I came in with the forms then, and I said, Dad, sign this. He said, oh, I'm not sure. I said, sign it, you'll just sign. And he said, I'm not sure. And I said, yeah. So we went back up to the barracks, because they were still there, and they gave us free passes to get the train. So we got the train, of course had to cross over from Connolly Station to Houston, which, to be honest with you, I can't remember how we done that, how we actually done that. Because it was never, we were on the train maybe once or twice before that, your mother might take you up to Dublin for a trip. And down we came. It was about lovely summer's evening. My mother bought me a lovely suede, golden colour, about that colour, pants, and a grey polo neck, but there was a tie in stuck onto it. It was nice. She wanted me to be dressed well anyway, so I did. And it was lovely. I always remember that. She bought me that down in Dublin Street in Longford. And we were met over there. Would you believe we were met over there by a Longford man at the time? He was Duty PO. He was Duty Petty Officer. So he met us. And it's very strange that he was from Longford and we were coming on the thing. So he brought us to the mess, the men's mess, where we had a lovely fry of sausages and raspberry feathers, And he always jokes. He says, these lads from Longford, he said, you know what, he said, when they came down here, they couldn't even tie their shoelaces. We went in and we did the training, like you're put on the square now, and the summers were lovely. Back in 70, the summer was gorgeous in 71. And you'd be sweating and you'd try to get a break off the square and all like that. Say, no, you have to keep it. You'd be marching around the square all bloody day, left, right, Clay Jazz. It was always Irish, Humphrey Hart and all that. So I was with Francis and Anthony. Willie Kearns, who came down but was left, couldn't take it. So he went back home to do the farming. I was one summer, again in the summer, I was on the climbing the cliffs, because if you look at how Bowling, it's a rocky, it's all high up. So I was climbing that. I was on my own, and I jumped down to what I thought was a rock, a ledge, and it wasn't. All it was a solid clay. So I slipped right down. I was about 50 feet up, I'd say. And when I landed, my knee just went out. I banged it, and I couldn't scream. I wasn't able to scream or anything, and I was away from the naval pier, where the wharf, as we call it, where there was always a person on duty. There'd be a person on duty because the boat's coming in and out, so they'd have to be there. I managed after about 20 minutes to reach a branch and pull myself up and limp up to the wharf, where your man called the medic. He said, I'm after calling an ambulance for you, so you'll have to pretend it's real sore. I said, you have to pretend it's real sore? It was killing me. I said, I don't have to pretend it's killing me, So I went up to the hospital. They drained the fluid off the knee, and they didn't do anything with it, and they let me out. So I was then 2 weeks behind then. So my friends were gone. So I had to go into another class, and it was like, most of these people were from Dublin. Now don't get me wrong, the wall wasn't bad, you know what I mean? But it was like join the Navy or go to jail, that type of, and the slackings I used to get, and I just missed them. So I phoned my mother after this, when I said, the lads are gone in front of me and I'm not with them anymore, And I said, Mum, I said, I want to go home. And she said, no, son, she said, you're better off staying where you are. There's nothing up here. for you. And I was crying on the phone, like I was really upset. And more or less I'm upset because not because she said no, but because my friends that I palled around with in Longford, we all lived together in the same Teffia Park area, you know. So she said no. So I remember going up that hill, and I told it before, it was a red bricks. And I sat down, and there was this sort of, it was a rock, but you could scrape from the red brick, you could scrape by, and I said, I'm not lonely. I remember writing that down, I'm not lonely. And of course I was lonely as hell. But that's, I think that sort of instilled in me like a resolute to say, you know, get on and get on with it, because you're not going to go home. So, you know, get over it. So I did, and I continued on. Well, the discipline in the training now, the discipline in the training, I didn't find that very strenuous. I didn't find it, I was fit, you know, I was fit for my age. And I always liked, you know, running and exercise. So I had no problem with the marching up and down and all like that. I think I just fell into that, no problem. And no matter where I'd ever work, I would find no problem in just going in and doing that, you know. So that was fine with me. I had no problem with that discipline, yeah. I actually enjoyed the ship. The only thing I ever enjoyed, every time I go out to sea the first time, just go outside Rocher's Point and the swell will come up and down, I get sick. It doesn't matter, whatever time I get sick. So I throw up, that'd be it then. After that, I was fine. The waves and things didn't bother me, and you could see sometimes you go out to sea, and like there's sometimes we went out and we're going across the Bay of Biscay when we're on the foreign trip, and like you see the waves just coming at you, and you're riding it was just lapping. It was frightening. And then when the waves would hit the ship, it would go like that. It would just reverberate through the whole house. So it was frightening, and it was also, you know, I was buzzed. I was buzzing, you know, and what I liked about the ship was the camaraderie, and the fact that when you're in the mess, or if we wanted to watch a video or anything like that, we'd all sit in together and watch it, or we'd play cards. It was just a group, you know, and you knitted well. Of course, there were some people you didn't get on with it, but it didn't, you know, you had your group of people, and it was lovely. The camaraderie on board ship was very good, and I liked that. It was fun. To me, and that's something that I still have to this day. You know what I mean? There'd be 40 to 45 of the crew. When you're out at sea and the weather is rough, and you have to go down after, you'd have to check that all the boats are secure and that nothing is flying. So you could easily fall overboard, and you might be missed for a while, and then the ship is gone. Sometimes you go down your own. You're working with someone else. You know, if you're like standby man and they're on the ship and they do so there's 4 guys. There's one does the wheel, one does lookout, one is in standby, and one is just, if something happens, he's there to take over. So there'd be 4 on the watch. So you'd have to walk around the ship and check that things are secure. But you go on your own. And if you did fall over, when you think about it, if you did fall over, it'd be 10 minutes before they realise, where's Willie gone? You know, or something like that. You know. So yeah, and it was, and especially when the sea was rough. I mean, the ship going up and down like that, and it was tough. Yeah, but it was also like there was an adrenaline in it as well. You know, you just feel an adrenaline. You could see those waves coming at you. You could see how high they were. I mean, do you ever see that movie, Perfect Storm? That's something like that. It was like that, you know. And I also done after the Navy. I went on board a fishing vessel as well. You know, that. The three of us, Francis, Anthony, and myself, from Longford, we all said we'd go into signals communications. So. Francis and myself went into the visual side of it, which means flags, reading flags, doing semaphore and flashing with the lamp. So that was Morse code with that. And Anthony went into the tells part, where telegraph, you know, the Morse code there. So we all went into the same division. Now, Francis and Anthony went out to sea pretty quickly after that. And for some reason, I was able to avoid sea for about 4 years. I'd done 4 years. I think it was one of the first. I'd done 4 years in the Navy without going to sea. So I left after the 4 years and I went to America. And I only stayed there for 6 months. And that's where I met my wife, Christina, her sister is married to my brother. So that's where I met Christina, and we came back then. But the second year, the second time, then I went to sea, and we went to sea on the minesweepers. The minesweepers, like they were like matchsticks, and they're because they're wooden. They used to say wooden men and iron ships, or iron men and wooden ships. Sorry, iron men and wooden ships. That was 3 minesweepers, and I was on the Bamba, and I always remember like you turn, you go to the side of that, and you could nearly put your hand out and touch the water. That's how bad. I mean, and you'll be holding on for dear life because they really were like matchsticks, because they were wooden. You know, they're wooden minesweepers. That's what they were, and I stayed a good few months out in those, and it was like that was enjoyable. Now the bunks in them weren't. It was very tight. It was very closed space in them, but it's very there again. Still, the camaraderie with you had with your friends was the thing that kept you going as well, and that's what I think always kept me going in those things. You know. This was taken in America with Ian, and I remember that time we were in an apartment building. We didn't stay, we only stayed for 9 months because our son, and I was just talking to him yesterday about it, he used to love the idea because underneath in the apartment block was the school. So he just had to talk, and he'd leave because there was breakfast in the school, and he loved it. So down, he wouldn't have to even tell him to go, he'd be gone. He'd be going down the stairs. We were on the 7th floor at the time. Lovely balcony, lovely 3-bedroom apartment we had at the time. But there was no place for him to play. Like there was no greenery. As you look out here, you see there was nothing. It was cement junk. Couldn't do this. So we said, look, I don't think this is a good place to bring up our son. So we came back. We didn't say. We came back from that time, and that was, and I don't regret that. You know, I don't regret that we came back for his sake as well. The first foreign trip and my last. It was first and last. I didn't do any other foreign trips beside that one. And I think it was 83. And we went, we were heading out to Lebanon. We had on the aft of the ship, we had a personal carrier that we were delivering. It was like a tank, not a tank, but it was it wasn't armed. It was UN, so it was peacekeeping. And we were bringing that over with some other stuff, gear for the boys and everything like that. So we were going into the Lebanon. But on our way to the Lebanon, we would go through the Bay of Biscay, and going through the Bay of Biscay was very, very rough, very tough. Once we got into the Mediterranean, in from the Bay of Biscay, so that's between France and Africa, so that's where the Bay of Biscay is, and it was a lot calmer. It was lovely. So we were in Palermo. We went to Greece, we went to Spain, we went to Cyprus, and into Lebanon. We went into Spain for just overnight, and a few guys missed the ship at that time. Yeah, he gets right over. He was locked up for about a month after that because of it. But we hired a car in Cyprus. We hired a car in Nicosia, just for the first port, and we drove about 60 miles from Nicosia. About 5 or 6 of us in the car, and we drove. No, we were drinking as well at this time. And we drove from Nicosia up to Limassol, and I remember going into this. It was a British pub, but it was great. We had great fun. We were gee-eyed, and we driving back again, back to Limassol where the ship was, and it was just we done it. But it was the trip over there, and you could see the oranges growing from the trees. I never saw this before in my life. You know, and it was great. It was lovely, and the fun that we had, you know, it was great. You know, and unfortunately, some of those guys that were with us have passed away now, and I find that sad, because they'll be only the same age as myself, and some of them might have been younger, and they just, you know, some of them have passed away, but some of them are still there. You know, but it was great. You know, the adventure was really when I saw Beirut. But no, Beirut wasn't very nice. It was bombed out. It was terrible. It was sad to see that. The adventure was then in Nicosia. Going to those places was an adventure. Going to Greece, seeing they were adventures. They were lovely. We were already out on patrol, so we were patrolling the west coast, and we got a call. They're saying that there's a plane reported missing. It was roughly around 100 miles off the coast, and so we answered that, and we were I think we were about 2.5 hours away from the site as it was, and when we got there, there was a few other cargo vessels there, and they were, I think one of them had actually had a helicopter on it, and we, under the commander Jim Robinson, he took over the control of all the ships that were there. He was going to be the Irish Navy service. When we got there, like there was bodies in the water, there was other stuff like seats and bits and pieces of everything, but like there was one, when I looked out, I could see a body was absolutely ripped apart, just ripped. It was like, I thought it was a cushion at first, but it was actually a body. And then, like, what was worse was, I think the guys that are on the Gemini, they had to go in and out and get the bodies, and next minute the sharks started to come around. That was, and I remember the captain saying, like be careful, but they were still going around, doing it and taking up the bodies, bringing them aboard the ship. I still see this 12 to 14-year-old boy, and I can still see his face to this day, just eyes wide open, like naked, being taken up on board, put into plastic bags. We didn't have body bags at the time. Putting them into a hold at the top of the stairs and aft of the ship. At the back of the ship, we call it aft, and just getting those bodies. And we only could put in place for so many. So when we were full with the bodies of what we could take, we then steamed home to the naval base with them and to unload the bodies. But as we were doing that, and I was duty NCO in charge of the watch, you know, you go upstairs to check, but when you're going up the stairs and they aft the ship, all you can see is the blood coming down the steps, and it was horrible time, really. It was like, you know, I always remember it because I went to Poland in a concentration camp. My friend brought me there a few years ago, and I always remember the deadness of the place. It's birds don't fly, nothing. That's the same feeling as it was. It was dead. You were numb. What I was doing was I was recording another body taken aboard at a certain time, moved. You know, the officer commanded us to do other things. All of these things had to be recorded. So that's what we were doing, myself and Derek Turner, who was sick with me at the time. And it was just like, it was dead. I remember the captain saying, you know, get a bottle of whiskey, give those lads a few shots of whiskey, because they were coming in and out with the, you know, with the bodies, and it was dangerous, and sharks and everything on board, so they had to be careful. So yeah, it was a terrible time. And I think, when I think about it now, that when our lads go out now, when we rescued migrants on boats and all that, they'll get someone to talk to them afterwards. We didn't. We just unloaded the bodies and went straight back out again, still on the ship, and back out collecting more bodies, you know. There wasn't, we're doing a great thing. Yeah. I think that didn't sink in until after, but at the time, no, you weren't thinking about that, no. I left in 85, so now, as you say, the break from America, and every time I did the 4 years, I went to America. So, like, I tried to get in the fourth time, and they said, what do you think this is, Butlins? You're coming and going, like it's a holiday camp. And so I didn't get in. Anyway, so that's when I started in Swiss School. But I would see, like, I've talked to guys now after that, you know, and they said, it's not the same anymore, William. It's not, there's no fun, there's no excitement, they don't get together in the messes anymore and watch things and have games and all like that. They're all in their cabins with their little iPhones or whatever, and that I wouldn't go back again. I go back again if it was like it was in the 70s, but I wouldn't go back now. And any of the lads that I met who were with me before, and they said no, they wouldn't go back now. It was just totally different. It's two things in the sense of, the first one would be, say, the friendships that I made, and the discipline that it instilled in me, and also I'm so glad, in a way, my mother said no, because I won't say it made me a man, but it mentally toughened me up rather than physically. Physically I was fine, mentally it toughened me up more. And yeah, absolutely, I wouldn't change it. I'd never change that for the world, no. It was, I think you do what you think is right at the time. So this idea of regretting something it's not in my vocabulary. I don't regret.